Patrol has had an outstanding record of prevention, rescues, and medical responses over its 95-year history. The totals for the summer of 2019 were as typical of many of the summers in recent years. 372 swimmer assists, 21 multiple persons rescues, with a total of 53 victims rescued in that cycle, 3 jet ski rescues, 45 serious medical responses, 325 EMT calls, and 125,459 preventative actions taken by Long Beach lifeguards. An outstanding record. The history of the Long Beach Patrol goes back to the 1920s. America was changing in the 20s with a growing middle class looking for things to do in the summer and on the weekends. The carefree life of the Roaring '20s, especially after the horrors of the Great War, created a generation in search of diversion and recreation. Coney Island, Atlantic City, and of course Long Beach, a 50-minute train ride from New York City, fit the bill. New York State Senator William Reynolds had created this bathing beach place to play, initially called the Estates of Long Beach. It became the City of Long Beach on April 13, 1922. Reynolds was its visionary first mayor. The city bought the boardwalk from the Estates of Long Beach, and with it came the responsibility of protecting the beach. Thus, the creation of the Long Beach Patrol in 1926. The beachfront from Ohio Avenue in the west to Pacific Boulevard in the east, taking over lifeguard responsibilities from the private bathhouses along the beach. Thus, the Long Beach Patrol was born. Here we are on Nevada Avenue, and we're heading east. This is the beach that is called Ohio. There has always been some discussion as its name that the boulevard that it comes in on is Georgia. As many of you may or may not know, in Long Beach, the boulevard to the east determines the name of the beach, with 2 exceptions. One exception is the beach we're on right now, which is Ohio, but it really should be called Georgia, because you see up here on the left side, the entrance to the beach is on Georgia. And the other exception is all the way down at the other end of Long Beach, which is the Azores Beach, which Azores is called Azores after the apartment house building that was named Azores, but the entrance is on Pacific Boulevard, and there's no entrance other than through the executive towers and the other apartment house buildings that are behind it. So as we're heading east, we're entering into the new area that you can see on the left and right how wide the beach is. This is all a result of the recent grant that pumped in the sand over the last couple of years and rebuilt the groin fields. The groins, by the way, are called groins, but most people will refer to them as jetties. So when I'm talking about the groins, I'm referring to the jetties that people generally refer to. I'm traveling today with John Scudden, who's the zone supervisor, assistant chief of lifeguards, and he really has a lot of knowledge on the lifeguarding procedures. So we're now coming up on the second beach. And John, what beach would this be called?
This would be Maryland. And we used to, back in when Chauncey's was there, people used to call it Chauncey's Beach because the Chauncey's was a bar on the beach. But for the sake of the police and for the sake of our headquarters and communications, it was called Maryland.
Now you see the houses on the left side here. Most of them are worth quite a bit of money. They were negatively impacted by Sandy, but positive side, the sand dunes you see on the left side, all those sand dunes were built by a Department of Interior grant in 1979-80, and that really has made a tremendous improvement in the beach down here, which used to be very narrow. John, you used to work down here. What would you say about that as far as the beach is concerned?
Well, yeah, I mean, I was here before the dunes were originally put in, and then when the dunes came in, all of a sudden the beaches were small again because the dunes took up a lot of space and they started to grow, south as they normally do towards the ocean. We got really small, but then again, like you said, Pat, after the storm, they rebuilt the jetties and they replenished the beaches, so they became big again. But for a long time, the beaches down west were very small, and really it didn't have much more room than a volleyball net, maybe. and a lifeguard chair and a truck.
So you can see to our left that they've built these fingers across the dunes, and the dunes played a major role, as I said about Sandy. Now we're going to come up here a little further down to one of the problems that does exist in the beaches, and that is, of course, bathroom facilities. There's a bathroom facility down here in Minnesota. That would be another 2 blocks down. And then there's another one that they're building, which we'll get a chance to see on New York Avenue. But we'll be talking about the beach bathrooms as we travel from here to the other end, which is Azores. By the way, the beaches in size on the west end are the smallest beaches. They average around 625 feet per beach, with the exception of Ohio, which runs about the size of the beaches down east, which is around 800 feet. So the beaches, and that was courtesy, by the way, of Bill Toomey, who in setting up the triathlon, he measured the beaches to let sure that the distances were appropriate. So anyway, the beaches down here are smaller and have always been, and the groin fields have been completely redone in the West End. We're going to find as we travel along that several of the beaches are not do not have new groin fields. Okay, so
we're in the West End right now, and typically, it's been broken up. The city is now in 3 zones as far as lifeguarding is concerned: the West, the Central, and the East. Whereas in years past, if I'm correct, Pat, there were 4 zones. There was the West Central area, the Central area, and the East area.
Yeah, it's interesting you should say that, John, because really the history of the Long Beach Patrol, which was first officially started in 1924, had its first chief of lifeguards in 1926. Before the 1924-26 era, the lifeguarding was done by the different hotels and bathhouses that were in the middle of town. And areas like we are right now were completely uncovered, and no lifeguarding for the people that were here during the summer. What changed was the Reynolds ended up buying out the estates and turning the property and the boardwalk and the beach over to the city of Long Beach. And that's when the Long Beach Patrol began. It's called the Long Beach Patrol, and the individuals that work it are referred to as the Long Beach Lifeguards. So we're coming up here on the left side to the new bathroom facility and storage facility. That would be a storage facility for the lifeguard equipment and for other beach equipment that needs to be taken in on a daily basis. So we can see that on our left side, and
it's also the beginning or the end of the boardwalk, depending on which way you look at it.
Yeah, the boardwalk, by the way, which is always controversial, runs 4.2 miles, a smidgen less. Some say 4.18, but it's in that range.
Yeah, that's a round trip, right, Pat?
That would be a round trip.
That'd be a round trip. One way. If you're going one way, it's 2.1.
2.1. And we also see up on the boardwalk, which is closed right now. By the way, I should have mentioned that this is April of 2020, and we're in a it's strange, for those of you who listen to this years from now, we're in a strange era of social distancing, and you're seeing the people on the beach here staying at a distance, but it's April 27th, I think, is the date, or 28th. And the year is 2020.
So now we're in the central. Well, it's still the West End as we teach it now, but in the past this would be West Central. This is still part of the West End Lifeguards now, but we're actually going into the West Home area of the city, right, Pat?
That's correct.
And this used to be called West Central as far as the lifeguards, but now it's still part of the West End. As the 3 crews that are in place now are all about just a little over a mile each, and they all have 8 chairs. So we man 24 chairs from top to bottom, or east to west.
How many lifeguards do you average on the chair, and what's the reason for that number?
Okay, well, we have. You want 3. You want a good 3 people on during the week if you can, and then 5 on the weekends, 4 to 5 people on the weekends, because there are certain minimums that you must abide by New York State safety laws. and that depends on how much beach you're actually watching. So for some people, you might see the flags real tight. Well, if we're light on lifeguards and we only have, let's say, 2 on that beach, and one person's on the chair and one person's on the beach, then they're only allowed to look at a certain amount of water. Okay. On the weekends, when we want to widen those flags out because of the number of people, we need more lifeguards, so we can put multiple lifeguards on the chair, which opens up the amount of water that we can safely watch. And that, again, is all dictated by the state of New York and their what they call their safety law.
Now, Nassau County also certifies all these lifeguards with a grade 3 lifeguard license.
Yeah, that's correct. That's an ocean test and training, but you have to first get your pool license, and then
That's a 1.
That's a 1. It's called a 1A. 1A being that you've satisfied the time and the eyesight requirements, because you must have 20/40 vision uncorrected in one eye. And I say one eye because I've asked that question. You can literally be blind in one eye, but the other eye has got to be very good. And then once you pass your pool certification, and then you must pass your ocean certification and the testing that goes on before that. There's a 6-hour class for most people, but the Long Beach lifeguards now, we have rookie training. The rookie training is approximately 90 hours before a rookie is put out on the beach. And when the rookie is put out on the beach, the rookie typically will not sit alone for at least 2 weeks, and would never sit alone, let's say, in a crowded day, probably for almost the entire first year, because it just takes that long, at least, I'd say at least a good amount of time to where you're more proficient in the chair. That's where the experience comes in on that older guard that knows a little bit more what to look for, and some of the little idiosyncrasies, and just getting the lay of the land, so to speak.
Now, we're coming up on Magnolia Boulevard. If you look on the left, you see these green apartment house buildings. That used to be where the Long Beach Recreation Department used to have an outdoor swimming pool. Lafayette, excuse me, I said Magnolia, Lafayette. And there's a bathroom up on the Boardwalk facility that was put in about 5 or 6 years ago. They built several of these bathrooms, and they came up with these different refreshment stands, if you want to call them that, for people who use the boardwalk. But you're going to start seeing a very different personality from this point on, because we're now coming into the middle of town, and the middle of town has a lot of the hotels and high-rises, and it's got a very different characterization. But on your left right here, you see how there's still large vacant areas right on the boardwalk. So, go ahead.
When did that municipal pool close? Can you remember?
Well, it closed before I started lifeguarding, which was 1964. So I would say sometime around 1960 would have been its demise. But I went there quite often as a kid, and it was a great facility for people. They just turned it into a maintenance headquarters for many, many years, and then they eventually sold the property off. So as we're traveling up here, the pink building further down the road was the Nassau Hotel, and now it's the Nassau apartment house condos, a classic example of Long Beach back in the 1920s. So just to pick that pace up on the lifeguarding, and to focus on the different strategies. John had mentioned the idea of the flags. We used to use ropes to keep the people in a designated area. John, why did they move away from that idea and move it to the idea of the flags?
We went to the flags for a number of reasons. First of all, so we can vary the width of the swimming area. So if we were light on personnel, we could tighten it up a little bit and limit the amount that the people are allowed to swim in. Okay, and we couldn't do that with the lines. The lines used to go out about 400 feet, the 300 and 400 footers, and so you couldn't switch that. And we can also move our flags, okay, to areas of the beach that are safer or less safe, depending on where the rip currents are occurring. So we will actually move them during the day, as the rip currents dictate. So it's at nice. And then an added advantage again is when we're off of work, there are no ropes, and surfers used to run into them, and then
John, we have an interesting piece up here. We have two, it looks like Nassau County police officers on a horse. This is not normal for
no, it's not
for us, but maybe we can stop here for a second and pull over.
Just give them a wave.
It's Nassau County. And let's also stop here for a moment if we can. You see on your left side the Allegra Hotel, or the Allegria, depending on your pronunciation. That is one of the two hotels in Long Beach that are operating at this particular time. So we're heading. This would be like the halfway point of Long Beach. The lifeguard headquarters for the umpteen years has been located right here. That's not going to be the case going forward. And John, maybe you can tell a little story before we go on about the lifeguard headquarters historically being on National, and then how it's being moved and why.
Yeah. Okay. Well, as Pat alluded to, the headquarters always was here. But unfortunately, in Sandy, it got washed away, and that headquarters got washed away for the third time. But this time it was nowhere to be found when it was done. So we have been. This will be I believe our 8th year in using trailers. But they are constructing the new headquarters, which is going to be 2 blocks up here on the left, where that equipment is right now. On Riverside Boulevard. The reason they're going to that boulevard is it won't impede anybody's view because there's an empty lot behind it. So the new headquarters will be over the dune, and will be the southern exposure and the east and west on the southeast and southwest exposure will all be glass. So we will have really a good bird's eye view of the entire beach, and we'll also be able to access the roof. So we will be also be able to watch the beaches better.
Well, let's talk about that bird's eye view. If you look to your right, you'll see the groin fields that have been built up in the last 2 years, and they've done a tremendous job of building up the beaches. These beaches are, I say,
twice as big
as they were. And if you look to your left, you'll see that empty lot. The 2 blocks are called the Foundation Block and the Super Block. The Foundation Block has the leftover remains of a hotel, and that's why it's called the Foundation Block, so you can still see the foundations for the hotel. And the Super Block has been called because they thought they were going to develop it in a large hotel, convention center kind of a facility, and that's still yet to be decided. So we're coming up here, right where you see the crane on your left. That's where the lifeguard headquarters.
Well, just a little bit past that, Pat.
Just a little bit?
Yeah, you can see the pilings over there.
Oh, yeah, further down.
Yeah, and this is another one of those centers you were talking about that they built just after Sandy. Some of the centers have our food pavilions. This one here houses one of the surf schools, one of 2 surf schools that are in town. One is here, and then the other one is down on the last beach, which is Azores Beach. So we have 2 surf schools in town. This being one of them, and then lifeguard headquarters, or as you see in the pilings there to the left, that will be the new lifeguard headquarters, which will open in the summer of 2021.
Yeah, it's a tremendous facility, and that's going to be where the central lifeguard crew will also be housed. So there'll be the lifeguard headquarters, and it'll be a dual feature, and that'll be used for the lifeguards who work at the central crew. These beaches, by the way, back to what I mentioned when we first started, these beaches run about 800 feet in width. They seem to be a little bit wider because of the fact that they didn't replace all of the jetties, groins, and you'll see that up here on the right side, where this is Long Beach Road, and Long Beach Road had a groin field, but it was not developed any further than what it used to look like.
Yeah,
so
it was not replenished, and you can see how small it is now versus the new ones, right, Pat?
Actually, and the reason why they didn't, there's been a lot of question about why they developed some beaches. Maybe we can stop here for a second. We can take a look to our right, and you can see that. Why they didn't do certain beaches with the groins and others they did. This particular boulevard is remarkable in that there was a gas line put in here in 1969, 68, 69, and that gas line, they were afraid of hitting it. So the gas line runs right up Long Beach Road and right up into the main part of Long Island.
And that goes all the way to New Jersey.
All the way to New Jersey, yep.
That's right. Okay.
So we're heading now into what is officially, in the lifeguard discussion, the east end of the patrol. The beaches are, as I said, rather large, and therefore there's a lot more coverage. Most of the people that go to the beaches, again down here, are more likely to be residential, where the middle of town has all the people from the trains. And John, maybe you can talk a little bit about that impact that the trains have on the large number of people that arrive here on a weekend in particular, but on nice days.
Yeah, if we, they have a special with the Long Island Railroad that on the weekends during the summer that they have an express train that doesn't stop anywhere but Penn Station and Long Beach, and then you can get to Long Beach from Penn Station in 42 minutes. And really, when they let out on the weekend, it's just a parade, just coming down the beach. And we were talking about that this morning. We had a meeting this morning, and we've had some weekends where we've had over 17,000 people come off those trains, and just going right down really to those middle four.
Did you say 17,000?
17,000 patrons come off those trains on the weekend.
So that has been a pattern for several years now.
Yes, what happens is the Long Island Railroad and the city of Long Beach, they have some deal. I'm just a lifeguard, so I don't know it, but they both get a share of the revenue, and it is a good money maker for the city of Long Beach and mutual for the MTA.
Now, if you look on your left, you see that there's some really high-end apartment house buildings. And you'll see the fingers again coming out from the beach, and the boardwalk, the snack shop up on the boardwalk, and you see the dunes that have been built and the grass that has been planted. It's really turned out to be a beautiful look all the way along here. So they're going to hope that these dunes will stay at about the same height, maybe a few feet higher, so that people, when they're on the boardwalk, can still see the ocean as they're walking along or running along.
Yeah, you're hoping those shrubs don't grow too much, right?
The people who live there on that first floor definitely don't want it to grow any higher.
Right, and this is most of this development happened in the 1960s, Pat? These bigger hotels?
Yeah, they used the phrase the Chinese Wall, referring to the Wall of China, that they were all so close to each other, but they have made some efforts to on the newer ones that have been added, but a good one that illustrates that point is coming up here on the left side, the Parc de Ville, which is an immense facility, and then the Neptune Towers, which is a little further down on Neptune Boulevard. And again, the lifeguard headquarters for the East Crew is located down here on Neptune Boulevard, where the lifeguard headquarters for the West Crew is on New York Avenue. Is that correct, John?
That's correct. They're both at butt ends of the boardwalk. So it's actually pretty easy. East end, their lifeguards would report there, and the West end, their lifeguards report on the other butt end. So and then the Central will be right in the middle. So it kind of keeps it pretty simple that way.
So we're coming up here to Neptune, and you can see that they're building in pilings, and the pilings are again for the new bathroom facility, and for the lifeguard, and for other beach equipment that needs to be stored on a daily or regular basis. So this is really kind of all new, and part of I think they've got a lot of the money from grants from Sandy.
Yeah, I believe so. So with all this new stuff also came new technology. What you started with, Pat, when you started lifeguarding, and even when I started lifeguarding, because that was 46 years ago, lifeguarding sure has changed, don't you think?
Yeah, let's go to some of the equipment. The first equipment, and the most important piece of equipment for a lifeguard, is the lifeguard chair. Lifeguard chairs were, I guess, standard procedure for all lifeguards. You have to have some sort of elevation to see the water. The problem that Long Beach had historically was because we have so many entrances. John, how many entrances are there to the beach?
There are about 38.
So these 38 entrances allow people to get in on a regular basis, and that's one of the problems. Where Jones Beach, for example, our neighbor, they have control of the highways and the roads coming in, so they can close parking lots and they can regulate people and turn them around and so forth. Not in Long Beach, so that's going to be a problem if it's tied into the social distancing, for example. But anyway, the lifeguard chairs were a problem because they were often used by vandals at nighttime, and they would break them apart and use them for firewood. So we made a decision back in the late 1970s to go to a new design chair which was made out of metal, and they've seemed to work pretty well. John, has that been the case?
Yeah, it's been pretty good. And then when we added those, if you remember, we added the phone lines at that time. We used to dig phone lines in the 70s, and so we could actually, call up headquarters, but we didn't have them in every beach, just because it was just.
Well, the phone lines were there until the 90s, I think, and then you went to a walkie-talkie, or.
When I came in as chief, we got rid of the landlines, and we call them landlines, and we went to a walkie-talkie system, and now we are all mic'd up. All the chairs have walkie-talkies. Officers on ATVs, going around on ATVs with walkie-talkies.
Maybe we can slow down right here for a second, because we're coming on Pacific Boulevard, and you get a chance on the left side to see the Azores apartment house building, which has been completely redone. It looks fantastic. And you're seeing the beach here, and the groins have really kind of disappeared. They're underneath the sand. Again, you wouldn't believe this, but there's a groin that goes from the right side out onto the ocean all the way back to the beach, the shore road. So this is an amazing difference, and we're entering into the end of the Long Beach Patrol.
The last two beaches. We would normally put two chairs here. The first chair here would be a swimming beach, and then the next chair, which obviously is not there right now because we're not set up for the season, would be a surfing only beach, and that's what would house that second surf school that we talked about. And back to the lifeguarding part of it before we finish this. Then we have some ex-lifeguards to the left here with their families, but lifeguards evolved a little bit more. Communication is better for the better. We were now using jet skis as assists. Our lifeguards are constantly using fins. They have to be recertified yearly in CPR. They are tested every year and pass union issues, and also pass lifeguard tests.
Yeah, they have to take a retest every year for the city of Long Beach.
For the city of Long Beach, and every 3 years for Nassau County. They have to be recertified CPRA and AED every year, and so that way that we keep them up to date.
Well, that's amazing that the lifeguards have to be in that kind of condition constantly. Yeah. It's a far cry from many years ago. Many years ago was a one beach swim. I wanted to stay with us as we're coming here to the end, but we're going to go into Lido. On our left side is the Lido Hotel, which is now the Lido condominium. And the end of the city of Long Beach is right here. This used to be called the Cove for many, many years back in the left here, but it's kind of got buried behind the sand dune. And you can see the sign coming up on the white sign. It says that the Lido Beach Towers, and then you get into a private area. But again, these beaches are walkable for people to walk through them. That they're not limited. So. In closing, we'd like to thank everybody for listening to us. I hope we've been helpful in getting you the information about the Long Beach Patrol and the Long Beach beaches. I'm traveling with John Scudden, who's many years. How many years, John, did you work?
This is my 47th year.
47th year. That's more than triple my years. This is Pat Gallagher, and I was chief of lifeguards from 1978 and 79. And Eric Krywe is on the back of the truck filming. And this has been a joint effort. I wanted to say that the Long Beach lifeguards have been supported by the Lifeguard Alumni Association and the city of Long Beach, of course. That's who we work for and who we care about. And the Long Beach Public Schools. Eric is a teacher up at the high school, and he was kind enough to come along with us today and and do this filming. And at the same time we've been doing this filming and talking, you're going to be seeing us from two angles, from the truck's angle and from up above. So, Eric, thank you, and thank you to the Long Beach School District for helping us do this today.
Yes, thank you very much, Eric and Pat. It's always a pleasure.
Okay, and that's it. We say goodbye to you from the Azores.